The stuff that we're going to talk about today, we love, we're real believers in, and I will say, as someone who's been in the business as an agency owner for a lot of years, I think it's really practical and helpful. But just to be really clear, we are not legal experts. We are not HR experts. We can't possibly cover everything. And ultimately, of course, you are responsible for your interactions with your employees and making sure that they are in conformity with the laws of both federal law as well as the laws of your state. But we do really believe this information can help you with something that's often difficult for a lot of agents, which just is, I don't want to say dealing with employees, but really working together in a positive way with your team. And so I'll turn it over to Taylor to do that. So Taylor, please take it away.
All right. Thank you, Fritz. We'll start off today and dive right in, and we'll play a hypothetical. You've hired a new team member, and now the real work begins. So you might be sitting with questions, wondering, are you preparing for a virtual employee or an in-office employee? How you might train that person to perform the job you've hired them to do? Do you have a consistent management style to apply? And then how will you handle or measure performance? So those are the things that we're going to cover today. To kick it off, we want to review just some similarities and differences that we've seen. Firefly's had the opportunity to start being in person and managing employees. That's how Firefly started in 2005 up until the pandemic in 2020 that forced Firefly to go home and be agile and continue working and serving our agents. So some of the similarities that we saw was collaboration can still occur in both one-on-one and group settings in both situations. Communication, in our experience, was not interrupted because we had outlets like Teams, group calls, things of that nature planned every day. Training can still be done in real time through the use of video conferences, screen sharing, etc. In the moment, decisions can still be made. So you can pivot with ease if there are issues. You can just get on a group call real quick. Or if you're in person, you can walk down to someone's office and have that collaboration occur in the moment. The main differences that we saw were that training is done through screen share, and presentations, that communication is virtual instead of face-to-face, and that remote management can create efficiency and productivity. I know I get a lot of questions from agents about, well, how do you know what people are doing and how do you know people are being productive? So hopefully we can highlight some ways to help you if you decide to be a remote employer.
Well, and can I just chime in with one real quick thing, Taylor, too, just
Absolutely.
for everybody to know, is that we have actually hired a number of employees during the pandemic. So we have people who are with us who were with us in person, but we have some people who their onboarding and everything was virtual and remote. And so Taylor comes to this with experience from both sides, right? It's not like, well, yeah, we can do this because everybody was already, already knew how it worked. When she talks about those things about training and onboarding and communication, we have done that. So anyway, back over to you, Taylor.
Thank you. When you approach training, a lot of you may either have had experience in a previous job or have heard of the paper operation manual days of doing things and getting training done. One of the things that we did at Firefly, the customer experience department that I oversee, was a completely from the start virtual department. So I wanted to be able to train with ease. And the main resource I have is standard operating procedures, or in short, SOPs. The goal of these is to have any employee at the drop of a hat be able to quickly access the way that we do things at Firefly and know exactly how to do their job. One of the tools that we use to accommodate SOPs electronically is OneNote. As you can see there on the slide, you have the opportunity to create sections and subsections to really go into specifics on how to do the job. And it's been helpful to us because anyone on my team has access to all of these at any time. And what's nice about it as well is if we are in the moment and we do have a workflow that we think, well, that would be really nice to make an edit to because it's just not working, or we run an experiment and find that a workflow is not working, we have the ability to quickly in the moment collaborate and adjust an SOP and that be the updated SOP, and you don't have to print out a paper and find the section and put it back in the manual. So it just works across the board. But this is also a tool that is not just serving for a virtual environment, but could also be used in an in-person management situation.
It totally can. And what I'll add on that too, just for everybody's benefit, if you're wondering, what about OneNote? What is that? Can I use it? Does it have a cost? It's free. I've already been working on some of the web information for this particular session. We'll have links to where you can download it. It's usually on your Windows computer, some tutorials from Microsoft on how to use it. But in short, it's really just like Taylor said, it's like a virtual notebook. It makes it really easy to file stuff as opposed to have, say, one big old Word document and trying to figure out, oh, how do I scroll down and find the operating procedure for, whatever the process is. So it's a great way to share information within your team because everybody can see it and edit it, as opposed to, something that's kind of stuck like we used to be when you print it on paper.
So some of you might wonder what an example standard operating procedure looks like. This is an active working operating procedure that we use for the customer experience team for personal line service request. This is the handling of both phone and email and how we organize our shared team inbox for task assignment. The goal of an SOP is to address all aspects involved in a workflow, so include screenshots and tables with specific details that will provide a really clear picture of how you want your team to execute a given task. And here you can kind of see the organization of it is to address all of those things. We have a shared team inbox, and we do task assignment based off of what Outlook provides us through color coding emails and categorizing them. And then the table that you see at the lower part of the screen is labels that are used in EasyLinks to document those interactions accordingly.
And I think can I say too, but part of the point, one of the main reasons I think Taylor's sharing that is that when you have an agency and you're doing things a certain way and you hire somebody, whether it's your first or your fifth employee, what you need is for them to be able to do it the same way, right? The way you want done, so that you don't have an E&O problem because they're like, oh, I thought I just remember that stuff. I don't type it down or whatever that is, right?
Yes.
So a lot of what Taylor's getting at here is whether they're in your office or remote, to have just those operating procedures down. It just gives you peace of mind. I think anybody who's hired and working for you also feels better knowing they don't have to guess or figure it out on their own.
Right. And it just, a lot of questions I get from agents when I do meet one-on-one with them is, how do I create these materials? How do I get this down on paper? And what I tell them is creating SOPs is taking what's in your mind and what has become involuntary. If you're, an individual agent or there's only one other office member that's assisting you, it allows you to scale because you're not going to have to spend so much time creating or just training because you've already thought ahead and you have that outlined, and it can just be updated in the moment if anything changes. And that's the best way to prepare in those situations is just getting what's in your mind and voluntary everyday tasks in a written SOP. The slide we're on now is a way that you can measure performance for team members. So all of the SOPs that we have pretty much are measurable in that we can, as a team, look at our productivity through results in EasyLinks reports. These are just a few reports that we use. It's not all the reports. We use an activity detail, a claims detail for a claims workflow that we've created. And then if we want to, we look at quotes just to see and understand the quote activity that we're using. Using management systems reports can help your team measure their goals and just keep them on track with any performance goals you set, or for them to really see the impact and difference they're making, which can create really great conversations with your team members. Most management systems have similar reports like the EasyLinks activity detail you see here. Our Firefly agents use EasyLinks, so the example we show here today provides a sneak peek of creating SOPs for a specific workflow and how EasyLinks reports can be used to measure that. For example, if you are a Firefly agent and if you were pulling this report, For a specific team member who is assigned a workflow, you would simply adjust the created by filter and use a keyword in the label filter. As you can see here, I have classification entered. And what that gave me was an output of all of the activities that have occurred in that given date range with the keyword classification entered. So this is an activity report that specifically addresses labels, and it allows me and my team to measure how many customers that we have classified. And you'll learn a little bit more about that next week with some of my team members who are going to review one of our retention practices around classifications.
And the one thing I just add on this slide for everybody, for all the agents' benefit, is that I think a common question, you said it already, Taylor, is, well, how can I know what my team member's doing? And by the way, this can be true whether they're working across town or, you know, in another part of your office where you assume they're working, right? And hopefully they are. I think most of them are, but they could be watching YouTube videos or, you know, doing other stuff on the computer. A part of the idea is that these reports that Taylor's talking about, they can be used within the team, you know, to see what's going on, but also as a way to run an activity report to be able to look and see, okay, for a given time period. In fact, this one I think is for a particular, this is like year to date, right? January through July 12th of a particular thing, which is classifying an employee. And you can see down at the bottom, and it might be a little blurry, but it has the, you know, tells the employee's name and so forth. But you could say, hey, you know, for the last week, I want to see all the activities in EasyLinks for this team member. And it'll list them all. And what it gives you a chance to see is just, hey, does it look like from this that my team member is, well, for one thing, you know, working at all, right? Obviously, but then are they doing your processes? If they're supposed to be noting things in EasyLinks, and you look and say, hey, you know, I know it was a busy day on Tuesday, but I only see two notes from the whole day, you know, for that. That would give you a chance to help train them on that. And also just to see that, yeah, I can tell there's activity happening. And when Taylor and I talked about this beforehand, one of the things we did say is that, you know, to us, our team members know that we can, you know, observe this kind of stuff. They know Taylor runs these kind of reports. It's not a secret gotcha kind of a thing, but just to let people know, among the many benefits of a management system like EasyLinks is that we can see what's going on. And I guess, Taylor, do you ever use it for just even like gauge the workload that one person is carrying over another?
What's nice, and I know this isn't everybody's situation, but we do have 2 service meetings a week just because of the sheer nature of not just things that we create for Firefly, but in addition to the service workload, we have conversations about this. So it's already a part of the conversation. I don't have to run them maybe as often as somebody might have to, but that's just because I think of the nature of how we meet so frequently. And we do have the expectation that we want to talk about everybody's workflows and how those are going. But I do think, you know, if someone was using it for that and maybe you had less interaction on a week basis, that it would be very useful in that way.
And I suppose, and I'm just thinking as a, you know, an agent who, you know, many years ago ran my own agency, if you did have, like we had 3 people, you know, at one time, and you said, well, I'd just like to take a look and see, you know, at least based on the workflows, is somebody carrying a lot of the load or and somebody's maybe not doing as much. Now, of course, to be fair, I think we all know that you might have one note in a management system on task that took an hour to do, right? So you can't just go by the sheer number, but it's at least a tool you can use, whether the employees are working right next to you or remotely, to see how things are going. All right, thanks for answering that, Taylor.
And the one thing that I would add that I did not add earlier is SOPs and doing things like this, having these shareable workflows that are written out allow for when you do have one person out in your office, it allows someone else on the team to pick up and continue on filling in those circumstances. It also creates a cross-training environment where if anyone is interested in learning a specific area of work or a specific responsibility, they can do self-study and then approach actually implementing it in those situations where you have someone out of the office and there's a need for a fill-in.
Yeah, everybody's probably had that happen, right? Somebody's gone, you're like, but how do we do this process? You know, it could be, when that happens, that's not fun. So it's a really great point, Taylor.
So we've discussed training. Now let's move on to managing employees and why it's important to have management principles. At Firefly, a couple years ago, especially when we went remote, we sat back and we said, you know, what do we need to do different in a remote environment that we're not already doing? So we talked about how we were managing in person and if there were any differences that we would need to account for when we went completely virtual. And so a couple of the things that we have had good success with is what you see here. We know that documentation is important, and finding a tool that works for you to document employee interactions, whether those are one-on-ones or performance-based. To always listen first and talk second. You will get the most out of your employees and really get an understanding of the pulse of your agency if you listen first. Being clear is kind. Set the expectation that no is the right answer in certain circumstances. And I would say one of the things we do really try to do is honor the power of a positive no, that sometimes employees will have ideas about where they think the company should go or a project the company should work on. And it's not that you are dismissing those ideas, but maybe timing wise or goal wise, what's on the horizon right now is just not in line with those. So we always tell people when we say no, it doesn't mean no forever, but it means no for right now sometimes.
Well, and sometimes too, sometimes no is the right answer from an employee as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, you don't, if this happens all the time, that might mean there's various challenges, but sometimes you say, hey, I got this thing that needs to be done. Could you do that? And sometimes we want to make it safe that they say, well, no, if you want these other three things to get done that you gave me already, right? As opposed to someone feeling like, well, I just have to take it all down and then I actually can't get to it and things are worse than they would have been if they were just honest or clear about
Yes.
what they were facing. Yeah.
And then encourage processes that are idea generating. Know your employees' goals, aspirations, and interests. So you want to know your employee more than the 9-to-5 job that they provide you, because they are human behind that role that they serve. It's very important to know and understand who they are and what makes them tick outside of work. From a performance management standpoint, you want to make sure that you're consistent. Consistency is really key in management. Get performance meetings on the calendar, make goal setting and expectation from the start to let the employee or new team member know that we are goal driven and we want you to be a part of those goals or create and set individual goals. Follow up on the goal progression for whatever goals are set, and then reflect on goals set for a given time period. So you always want to have an end in sight for a goal, an end date and time where you can reflect and say, did we hit the markers we set up to hit in the beginning when we set this goal? And have a good conversation about why it happened or why it did not happen.
Yeah. Well, and I was just, if I could, Taylor, say this might
Yeah.
be a little tougher, I suppose, if you've got somebody who's worked with you for a long time and that's new.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, this is what we do. And I think we say from the beginning, you don't have to do what we do. But like even from our job posting, they say we're goal driven, we're always trying to improve and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So it shouldn't be a shock, right? When you sit
Right.
and Taylor, when she sits down with people when they're new and they're on board to say, and actually she'll show you the schedule here in a minute, but to show you this is what we do and this is how we
Mm-hmm.
do it and this is when we're going to follow up. And of course, you're trying to hire people who like that, right? Who want to improve and do better. But I think a lot of what she's talking about is consistency and also just really clear, a clear outline for that team member of yours, that employee of yours. So you're not just walking in one day and say, "Hey, so I want to talk about that thing you were supposed to be working on." They're like, "Wait, what?" That hasn't been on my radar screen, and she's going to explain how we keep those things front of mind. Yeah.
Yes. One of the items on goal progression, if I can add one more point here that I didn't include, is you also want to make your goals visible. To Fritz's point just a moment ago, you don't want it to be something, even if you have a structured performance management schedule, you want it to be a place where when you leave those performance meetings, those goals are shared with an employee and they're somewhere that it is easily accessible for them. One employee tip that we'd like to share that we've had good success with is being open to the idea of creating space in your employees' week for focus time. Leading a team of 3 service agents and also working with the rest of our Firefly employees has allowed us to promote the concept of focus time. And really the goal is that we have an understanding each team member typically has a lead responsibility that requires a bit more time or is just more labor intensive to complete. And the goal of focus time is really to set aside a time window for focus on that specific responsibility, or if they have a side project they're working on, that we understand if we allow that focus time to occur, it actually increases productivity and generates a better work output than someone who is trying to really focus on a lead responsibility and juggle all the interruptions that can occur in a day, even in a virtual environment like phone calls or team calls.
Well, and can I just use just some real life examples in case agents are wondering, well, what would maybe one of my team members use for focus time? What's a lead responsibility? Like next week's is going to be next week's session is about retention. And an example, and we had one last season on retention as well, but example could be like if you're using, whether it's EasyLinks Retention Center or some other tool, or you just have whatever your process is to work on retention, you might say, you know what, we're going to need to make sure that that my employee has, a block of time, maybe it's, an hour, 2 days a week or whatever, where they're going to do nothing but that. And they're not even going to answer the phones. And that's okay, because they're going to get to it afterward, right? Or if you have 2 employees or it's them and you just know if the phone rings during this block, I'm going to pick it up because I want them to focus on that retention item. And there are other things that it could be too. It could be sales related, cross-selling. There could maybe have somebody's doing some stuff for you on social media, but and we have one of our team members focuses a lot on commercial renewals and needs a part of a day to do that. It just gives them a little, it just makes it safe for them just to focus on that thing and not get pulled away and an important priority doesn't get done, right? So I think that's been really well received. And that could either be in the middle of the day, or I'll just throw this out too. Even when we had our little agency, myself, and we had 2 employees, our workday was 8 to 5 with that hour for lunch. But we'd say from 8 to 9, we're not going to answer the phones. And it's your focus time to work on stuff without having to worry about any interruptions. But you could stagger it too. There's different ways you can do it. It's a cool idea. And I really thought it was great that Taylor included it here, because it's one of the simple things that can make the work not easier necessarily, but more manageable, and make sure the important things don't fall out, aside because of just ringing phones.
Yes. If I can add one more thing, Fritz, I think that even, not that this is not important in a virtual environment, I do think even in an in-person environment, it could be even a little bit more important. I know, in a funny way, the office highlighted a lot of the toxicity that can occur in an in-person environment. But what this allows you to do is to set the standard that it is okay for so-and-so not to answer the phone during this time, and there be not that feeling of, oh, well, that person is slacking off for today or whatever. It's just an expectation of the culture that anybody can have the opportunity for focus time if it's needed. So
yeah. And if you're in person too, that can be important, because somebody sees somebody sitting there and they're not on the phone and feels like, oh, I should just talk to them. And by the way, this is the other thing that I could throw in. Maybe agents, I did this when I was an agent too. I'd sometimes tell my team, I've blocked out 2 hours of focus time here. I'm going to make some cold calls for commercial insurance prospects, or I'm going to do, it's my once a month paying the bills and stuff, so I'm going to block out this hour and do it. I'm not taking any calls during that time. So that can work for you too.
Yes. All right. And then you might wonder, what does a typical performance schedule look like? So the performance schedule you see here is what we observe at Firefly for our employees. This is something that they're aware of from day one. It is a part of my onboarding that I do with all Firefly employees. We talk about how performance is managed, and then we review the schedule. So as you can see there, what we do is the time clock for performance management starts at day 1. At 2 months, employees check in with me, and I check in on, how's your technology working? How is work going? How do you feel your onboarding and employee training went specific to your role? It allows us to have a really great communication, and for me to get feedback and ways that Firefly can improve that initial onboarding experience for employees. At 4 months, I meet again just to have another touch base. At that point, we've probably gone past the employee getting trained on all the areas that they're going to cover, and they're becoming more confident and maybe proficient in those areas. And we can start talking about what we're going to do at 6 months, which is set goals, their very first set of goals, actually. So at 6 months, then we have a performance appraisal where employees sit down with myself and their supervisor, and we just reflect on how the last 6 months has gone, their first 6 months with Firefly, and then we set their first set of goals. And as you can see, the latter half of the year, the next 6 months, it's just a repeat of what we did the first time. So in those 2 check-ins they have with me, they're also going to be reviewing goals in addition to having conversations with their supervisor about goals or what's going on in their area of Firefly. And then at 1 year, we have another performance appraisal just to recap and finalize discussion of the completion or why a goal did not get completed from 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, and one thing that I would just add here, because it'd be easy to overlook the importance of this. On the right-hand side, she talks about maintaining the schedule. I think one thing Taylor does really well that makes this work for us, because she manages this for everybody on our team, right? So even if it's somebody I supervise, Taylor puts these on the calendar, whether it's the 6-month ones or the 2-month ones that she does. Point is, it's on the calendar, right? So you know how it is. If you say, oh yeah, we should talk later this week, we need to review your goals, or we need to do that 2-month check-in or whatever, not likely to happen. When it's actually a solid time on the calendar, it does. And it's just one of those little things that makes a big difference.
Yes. And one, you might see again, OneNote being referenced. We use OneNote a lot at Firefly, but it is a tooltip I'd like to relay. We use it for managing employee performance notes, and those notes that go into my HR check-ins or performance appraisals. All of that is detailed in how things went, the goal progression, any areas of concern that the employee's having, or technology issues. We try and make sure that we track all of that so we make sure we are in clear communication with employees most of the time. We're not perfect at it, but we're at least trying. Setting communication expectations. One of the ways that we do this, it's really a 2-step process. First is just consistent communication. And when we went virtual, one of the management principles and performance management principles we stepped back and added was having weekly one-on-ones with our team members. That might not be feasible for you. So we have some team members who their supervisor and them have a monthly, and I still think it's effective for them. It allows them that time to keep the lines of communication open. It allows them that it's on the calendar weekly or monthly, on a weekly or monthly basis, where they know they have that uninterrupted platform with you to discuss any questions they have, goal progression, discussion of ideas. I know myself with the team members that I supervise, I do get a lot of their personal thoughts or ideas of how the team can contribute in other ways, and just really unique ideas that I think people are a little bit more comfortable talking about in a one-on-one setting, especially if you're receptive to hearing those. And then you might wonder what a typical framework for a one-on-one would be. The goal is for it to be pretty simple. You want to, like we said earlier in one of the slides, you want to listen first and talk second. Firefly approaches it to start off with a few questions. We ask, what's on your mind? What have you been working on this week? And then what else is going on? And then typically, if there are items, I know for myself, I create a little agenda if there are things I want to check in on, whether it's goals, because we've had some time in between when we set goals, or items that I know a person's working on, like a project, I can make sure those land on the agenda. And again, another tool tip, I use OneNote to do documentation of all these one-on-one interactions that we have with team members.
And could I just make one comment on the one-on-one thing, Taylor? And I'll keep it brief, but I think one-on-ones, weekly one-on-ones, is like one of the most useful and underrated things you can do to actually work well with an employee. If you spend 15 minutes even a week just sitting down one-on-one, just say, hey, what's going on? And, you might find out, oh my gosh, I'm super busy. I got all this stuff. You may find out there are problems with a carrier is taking rate that you didn't know. Maybe there's a problem they have with their computer. Maybe something at home. Maybe things are going great. But the point is that it lets you be in the know because you're listening. It lets you communicate really well with them. And boy, this is 1,000 times better than like once a year sitting down and saying, so it's time for your annual appraisal. How are things going? Well, you can't sum it up anyway. So I feel like this really helps us keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening. And I think it gives the team members a genuine chance they know every week, you and they know you're going to get a chance to talk. So if you're like busy and I can't get to that right now, well, I'll just make a note for my one-on-one on, whatever day it is. So even if you only have one employee and you think, well, we're together all the time, there's something about that time to actually talk about these things that I think makes a big difference.
I agree. All right, the step 2 of the process is, at least for Firefly, the bi-yearly performance appraisal. And you might wonder, how does that process work? How does that get initiated? And what we do is 1 week prior, an email goes out as a reminder for an employee and the supervisor to write an essay reflecting on the last 6 months' goals and how things have gone generally, any areas for personal development, etc. Then the day before the performance appraisal, we do an essay swap. So the employee gets the supervisors and vice versa to review and take note of any questions they have, so we can have a really fruitful conversation the next day about performance. And then the actual prompt that we provide, you'll see there at the bottom, is we ask people in a written narrative or essay describe areas for improvement, achievement of goals, and goals for the next 6 months. And even though that's pretty short and sweet, it's generated a lot of really great conversations. Most employees are always really ready for those performance appraisals, and they come reflecting on things. I know myself, because of the one-on-ones, I think most of the time now our essays with employees align because we have that open communication and we know what's going on day to day. But I also find here I can find really great ideas from employees who come up with, hey, for the next 6 months, here's a goal I'd like to work on. And it comes out of nowhere. And I'm like, that's a great idea. Yeah, let's make that a priority. So it just gives, a lot more than, as you can see, Michael Scott gives when someone
Yeah.
Does a performance appraisal with him.
Well, and the Michael Scott method might be more akin to what we used to do years ago before Taylor helped us switch this up, and which many companies probably do. And maybe you're thinking, oh,
Right.
performance review, I got to find a questionnaire. And we did it, rate yourself on 1 to 5 in these different areas and stuff. It really never was very helpful to us. And, we're not the type who is going to score everybody and let go of the lowest 10% or anything silly like that, right? But for us, the open-endedness of it really just lets you and the employee just say, yeah, here are the things. Here's the things I've been doing. Here's what I'd like to do in the future. And it's just way more real than, hey, evaluate yourself on this, and then I'll evaluate you too, and we'll see if it lines up. So we really appreciate Taylor helping develop this for us, because I think I just think it's really made the process real, as opposed to some exercise you have to walk through just to keep working for another year. Yeah.
Yep. And leave just wondering what the next year will bring. It doesn't allow for conversation, I think, in those situations. What we've included here is an example of what might be more realistic for an agency of 1 or 2 or more. This is just a performance timeline that you might put into practice to manage employee performance that is similar to Firefly, but different in the fact that you might find it more feasible to conduct monthly one-on-ones, and those can be done between months 2 and 5 before the 6 and 12-month performance appraisal. But that's just a little tool that we thought we'd include as a suggestion if it works for you. You might wonder where some of these ideas have come from and where we get just influence. And if you were in the season 1 hiring employees webinar, we did reference Ideal Team Player. That is something that has served Firefly well in recruiting great team members, but it also serves a dual purpose of helping you to continue to develop your employees and maintain ideal team players. We have also tried to focus, I'm going to be doing an exercise at our Friday team meeting that comes from the 5 dysfunctions of a team. It's a really great fable if you ever want to listen to it. It's a really great audiobook. I know sometimes those are hit or miss. And then we have had great success with Radical Candor. There are elements there that we use in our one-on-one conversations. And then Crucial Conversations is just another tool to help have those really difficult conversations sometimes that need to happen.
Well, and I would add, just in full disclosure here, I think every one of these books that we've read, it's not like we read it and say, oh, that's what we're doing. We did is we read it and we said, oh boy, we could totally do that better. And I remember when I first read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, I could totally recognize things in that book and saying, oh my gosh, we absolutely do that and we need to change it. And so it takes some effort, right, to actually go ahead and apply those things, but they're all very practical. And by the way, the giveaway at the end, we're going to give away 6 copies of a book of your choice. If you stick around to the end and leave a comment, just because we think they're so worth it, and we wanted to put some of those in your hands.
And then we will leave it with, what questions do you have?
Someone asked, when you're hiring, do you give any tests or personality analysis?
Yes. So when we hire, we haven't had the opportunity, I should say, yet, because Firefly does not hire a lot of repeat positions. As we grow, we find a specific need, so we actually create positions as we hire. And in those circumstances, we have not yet had to do a test of skills or anything. We've had really great success with Indeed recruiting, and a circumstance like you might be looking for CSRs or sales agents that provide, through filter questions, really robust answers to give me an idea of what their experience might be like. So I would say, it's always an option. I don't do personality tests, but I will say, if you read Ideal Team Player, it is a very great tool to help you kind of assess 3 really great traits that you want to look for in any team member that's going to serve in any role.
That was the thing I was going to add. We don't actually test for that exactly, but our hiring questions and so forth are geared to that. By the way, that's some really, really good information. The hiring stuff from last season is available in the agent portal. We do not make that available outside of Firefly because, honestly, we feel it's that good and don't exactly want to give that one away. But to the Firefly agents, we do. So you could check that, Mary, in the agent portal if you look up hiring employees. Well, we've got a couple other really good questions coming through. Here is one from Carrie. Taylor, are you doing any random incentives like gift cards or extra 30-minute lunches, or implementing fun stuff for morale?
Well, with our structure, Firefly meets on a quarterly basis. So we try to make those quarterly meetings really, really fun. For example, this Friday, I've scheduled out for the entire team to do a team building event. We're all going to go axe throwing, or as one of our team members clarified, it's actually hatchet. So we're going to go hatchet throwing on Friday. But we do try, even in those meetings, to do fun, interactive team building events. We don't do anything by way of like gift cards or lunches. I know that when we do get an incentive from the carrier, we do spread the wealth there and make sure that that's shared with the team, especially my team who does service and writes business. But that would be my answer. Do you have anything to add there, Fritz?
I think, I talk about morale is a great question because work is work sometimes and it's a bit of a slog. But I think we overall try to make the work fun in the moment too. We try to make a point to people to say, we don't expect you to work after hours. We want to get the work done during the day. We want to be able to laugh about stuff. And so one thing that we do that is fun, I just like regularly, is we have Microsoft Teams, and Slack is kind of like that. It's just a way we communicate together. Now you can use that whether you're in person or remote, but it's just a way to have little chats. Taylor will remind us when it's somebody's birthday, and then people have birthday comments, or there's just people sometimes post about something that they did this weekend or last night, or picture one of their kids. Those things, I think, just kind of make it fun and help people to realize we are a lot more than just a place. You just come here and you work, and we don't want to hear about the rest of it, right?
Yeah.
So we've got a few more. This one asks, what is the best way to remotely encourage sales employees? This one's from Evan. In your opinion, when I started out in the business, we had a sales bullpen, and the agent would come back there and motivate the team in person a lot, but I struggle with finding and encouraging a remote high-level producer. That's actually a really interesting and specific question, Evan. And I guess I will say what we found with Firefly is a lot of that, just as we bring in agents to be with Firefly. We found that for the most part, people are either going to go write business or they're not. They're like, they've either got the hunger and the ability to do it, or it's not so much there. Now, if somebody has the hunger, what they do need is in fact, like my dad taught me so much stuff. Here's some things to say. Try these phrases. When they say this, here's a way to respond. So to me, a lot of that encouragement, like from our experience, would be more the how. If they need the why, or like the, hey, get out there and make some calls, I don't know if in person or remote you can really make that happen. But what I would say is that the one-on-one kind of setup, or if you have more than one producer, if you have, say, 2 or 3 times a week for 30 minutes in the morning, hey, let's just have a meeting. Actually, one thing Taylor didn't mention is we every morning have what we, if we were in person, we'd call stand-up meeting, where we just all come in on Teams and have an opportunity to say, hey, anybody have something coming up today that everybody else needs to know about? What do we have going on? Here's the carriers we're meeting with. Here's some agents we just brought on board. You could do that in agency too. Hey, I've got this commercial account I'm writing. This renewal's coming up. We need to take care of it. So I think the regular interaction is a key there. And so Evan, whatever it is, I'd probably have it scheduled. And since you and other agents who do this are good salespeople, maybe just have some stuff prepared to say, hey, I'm going to share a sales tip or something with you. But as far as like the giving them the drive, I don't know. I don't have any way to do that. Is there anything else you'd add on this one, Taylor?
I think on this one, Evan, my advice to you would be one of the things that we do for our team members and specific roles is we have daily indicators. And that's something that I think in this situation, you could open the conversation by, I don't know if you use Sales Center and Easy Links, but saying, what was your activity in Sales Center? What do renewals look like? Are we able to cross-sell anything? To open that conversation, have it be structured so that it's not just a daily thing. Maybe you can make, if you're looking to hire someone virtual, you can have something. Teams has a really great platform to have channels where you can have visualizations and things like that to show who maybe got sales for the week. But I think using a combination of those things could maybe help. But to Fritz's point, I think when you're looking for someone, really look for someone that has a great combination of hunger and people smarts, so that you're getting somebody who can handle that sales position.
They need more direction rather than a push, right? Yeah. There's just some guidance rather than a push. But we've got a couple other really great questions here, so we'll continue to answer these. Here's a question: when do you talk, Taylor, about increases in pay, and how is that handled?
Yeah, great question, Mary. We actually approach this on an annual basis. We look at people's pay once a year around their anniversary when they started with Firefly. In the last year, I've been working to help the company create a compensation strategy so that we have a consistent way that we approach compensation for every employee. And that typically starts at the owner level. And then we have a conversation and relay what increase, or, if there's a bonus situation for performance that was just above and beyond for the year, we have that conversation with the employee and try and make that process as transparent as possible.
And I think with that, and the only thing I would add is I think it's good for employees to know when you're going to do it. We're going to do this once a year or whatever. I did have once a former employee in my little agency who said, oh yeah, I worked for a guy for 10 years and I never got a raise. And I thought, whoa, that's both interesting and I'm surprised maybe she didn't bring it up. But I think for employees to know what to expect, one thing that we try to make clear for our team too is that we do, and we have some software we subscribe to, a system we subscribe to for this because we've gotten big enough. But if I were a local agent, what I would want, one thing I would check is just to look and see, well, if let's say it's a customer service person, check the listings on Indeed and elsewhere to see what are people paying out there for that same position, just so you don't find yourself accidentally too far behind or too far ahead than what that pay is. And what we try to let our team members know is we love you, we really do, and we do want to have competitive pay, but it's going to be in that range of what other companies are paying. Where it's not like we're going to be 25% above everything else that's going out there. So this is obviously an important thing to discuss with people. A couple other ones, boy, you guys are these are really great. What's your opinion on having both in-office and virtual employees? What do you think, Taylor?
Well, we've done both. We've never done it in a hybrid way where we've had people in office. Well, I guess for a little bit, Lizanne was still working in office when we first initially went remote. I think it can work. What my advice would be is to really have a pulse on the employees who you might have in office and see if you can offer them something that works. If it's not full-time office work, that you might give them also a hybrid situation. If you're going to have employees that are completely virtual, humans are humans, and we're evaluators and scale evaluators, if you catch my drift of like, well, this isn't fair, this is fair. And so I would just say know your employees and and find what works best for you. I think it can work, but make sure you have those things similar to it. Not everything we said today is something you should take for gospel, but have something like that set out so that expectations are clear for both in office and virtual employees.
And the only thing I'd add to that is that both the expectations are clear and that those who are in the office can see in ways,
Mm-hmm.
both with the interaction and maybe some reports, that the remote employees are getting the job done, right? I think the biggest problem you could have with that is the feeling, I think would be the feeling of unfairness. Why does this person get to do
Yes.
it and I don't, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm the person in the office, I just want to make sure that I'm not performing less because I feel like the other person's not performing less. By the way, our
Mm-hmm.
experience has been that when people are working from home, they really do enjoy it. It's a wonderful
Yes.
benefit. I love it. And it actually motivates you to say, I do not want to mess this up. And
Right.
so I'm gonna kick butt on this because I want to do really well. Here, someone Rebecca asks, is the trend in the workforce for smaller agencies to keep hybrid with remote? And I'm going to assume that the added word there would be workers. And maybe I could answer that one, Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer I would say is I'm really not sure.
Yeah.
We do see many of our Firefly agents, and it's been this way even before the pandemic, not having an office. There's been more since then. And therefore, if they want to hire somebody, I mean, unless they want to bring somebody into the house, which can be done. That's what my dad did back in the mid 80s, build a little office in the basement and had somebody come there. Um, but I think if an agent has an employee or two, you kind of have to decide, am I going to do an office and stick them in there, or are we going to do it remotely? My guess is you're going to see more remote employees because it's just any money you're not having to spend on rent and so forth, you can put into marketing or yourself or your team, right? And I see more small agencies feeling like if I can be findable online, if I can be where I need to be with electronic means, then why would I have the expense of an office and bringing somebody in, especially if I can have somebody who does good work? Related to that question is this one, also from Rebecca, actually. Thoughts about integrating a virtual assistant into the office. Funny enough, we just talked about this. I did with my partners on Monday. Because we know that something's going on out there. Virtual assistants, for those who aren't familiar, are where you basically have somebody, in a call center type of environment usually, and sometimes you can find them on, kind of like freelancer kind of websites. But somebody who probably is in another country, works at a pretty low rate, but can do some non-agent activities, not some stuff that doesn't require a license. Our conversation, Rebecca, was just to ask, how does that affect E&O? you know, uh, and making sure that we wouldn't have people, because if you got a remote worker, somewhere else and they make a mistake on something, then it's you who will be on the hook for it, right? So, uh, when a customer has a problem. So that was something, but we're actually looking into that right now ourselves. We're checking with our E&O carriers. We're also checking with our carriers to find out, how do you feel about virtual assistants? Would you permit them to access a carrier website or not? Or are they not so comfortable, because there can be some pretty sensitive information in that, and how well vetted is that person? So that might be a future topic for us to do in Modern Agent, Rebecca. I appreciate you asking that one for sure. Let's see. I think we had maybe two more, and we'll try to do these quickly because I see the time is zooming by here. So this person, William, says, in the 3.5 years I've been a Firefly, I've noticed most upper management are from a couple of families. My question is, when working with family, have we seen it's easier, harder, or the same as working with unrelated personnel? William, hopefully none of your family's watching right now, because you say you've had difficulty when working with family thus far. It's a great question. And some of you might have wondered, should I hire family? And the answer is totally, it depends. I know my sister isn't watching right now, but I had a sister once when she was, I think, just out of high school. She worked for us, and she made her password, her login to her computer, something like "Fritz has no business here." She was not real thrilled at the idea of having to work for, sort of working for her brother. And for everybody's sake, she found another job that she liked better. Working with family can be difficult. What we found worked before we'd started Firefly was we were all in sales. So we simply, what's the saying? You eat what you kill. And so you didn't really have to worry about what you paid, because I think pay is where that can be an issue within family too. If you just get the commission from what you write, with a split for the agency to provide the service, that makes that easy. I think you have to know your family member. And I think for Firefly, I think it helps, because if we have something we disagree on, we know each other well enough that we can just really kind of hash things out and get some of that stuff done more quickly, rather than having to feel like, oh boy, how am I going to discuss this really hard thing? Is this person going to want to talk to me again? We know that we're going to be family when it's done, so we have to, be professional and kind enough as we go through it. So I hope that helps a little bit, William. I think family can be really great. We actually have some agents whose spouses work with them, or a child, son or daughter. That can be fantastic because that helps them with some of the hunger too, though, right? Because they realize this isn't just a job. This is gonna help me. It looks like the comments there have ended, so I think we'll go ahead and end the session. But everybody who's here again, truly we appreciate it. We hope to see you here next week and beyond. Watch your email for this and some extra information and links, including OneNote on the stuff that we talked about today. All right.
Bye,
Bye-bye,
everyone.
everybody.